I can see your desktop fine. Looks great. And I can see your slides there. Wonderful.
Okay. Thanks, guys. Sorry about that.
No problem.
So I'll just do a quick revamp of what we just went through. Of course, if anybody wants to write down any of the initial information in case you have questions, want to send us an email, definitely grab our email addresses off there. This is basically the timeline that Lanai was just talking about. And here's just an overview of some of the platforms that we definitely support. Concept, obviously, is being able to support all these platforms from a single console, single instance, be able to manage the entire environment. We'll, of course, get into more detail on how that's done and how you can do that across a WAN environment and optimize speed, performance, and manage all those sites. Obviously, you see the operating systems broken down, and major OSs are all supported. We've got Windows, Linux, all Linux distros listed there. Online databases, including the big one, the Oracle, SQL, MySQL, Postgres, all listed. Applications, including Exchange group-wise. We also have bare metal, and we will get into some details on how the bare metal works for both Linux and Windows systems. It can be server or desktop, and hypervisors, and supporting Zen, Citrix Zen Server, Hyper-V, and VMware, and we'll get into some details on that. The SEP System Master Server itself does not require a huge amount of hardware to make it run. It's actually a very compact, very well-written piece of program. The main memory on the system should be around 2 gigs, 1 to 2 gigs to start with. Of course, you want to size this for the environment, but this is a minimum. What we're going to demo it on just has 1 gig of memory, and we'll show you where to download the demo and how that works. So anybody can download that for free and test it. It does require Java. You do need Postgres. It will install Postgres for you if it's on a Linux box, or it'll install data on the Windows side. If it's 64-bit Linux, you do need to install the Postgres piece first. The System database itself, even with thousands of servers, doesn't get larger than 50 gigs. It'll track just server schedules information. The backup storage will, of course, you'll want that on a different storage location. And the hardware itself does not require separate drivers. We use drivers specifically from the OS. So if the OS can see the hardware, we can back up to the hardware. You're not going to have to wait for additional drivers to make that work. So that means you can plug in anything, make sure your OS sees it. You can plug in a USB drive and temporarily have that available for a backup area. So you can put it onto USB and move that offsite or whatever you need to do. On the system network, if you have a master server, here's just a small example of some things you can be looking at doing. Number one is the system server itself. So that's the master server. On that master server, you can have number 2, which is a local disk, or number 3, which is the network disk. We can talk to either one as long as the operating system sees it. If that network disk is being shared for all of your servers on the stand, we can do a LANless backup and optimize performance so you're not getting backup hits across your network. Or we can go directly to tape, either physically attached or attached through a SAN, and have that also do LANless backup or talking directly to the system server. If we move to number 5 down at the bottom, you'll see that we have what's called a remote device server. The remote device server allows you to have a server offsite at another location with a slow WAN link going between the 2 sites. But you can make that a local backup for all your servers that are there. So you can optimize your performance at your remote site. And then you can do what's called a migration task. And that migration task will actually move data from your remote device back over to your master server or your master disk location. So you can get off-site backups with one console, one schedule, and manage that all together, but still maintain optimal performance for your immediate backup needs. The one thing that really sets us apart is performance. And when we're talking performance, we actually get very good performance with a multi-streaming, what's called data streams. And the data streams work across multiple servers. So you'll hear other folks talk about multi-streaming, and yes, they'll open up multi-streams to a single server, and you're limited to that server, that kernel, and that type of performance for that one device. we will actually multi-stream to multiple servers simultaneously. And what this does is allow, in this example, we have 9 servers, allow us to back up all 9 simultaneously to one SESM server. So if these are all gig, your SESM server itself is 10 gig, we're able to back up the entire group during the same job schedule and multi-stream it to the server, optimizing performance for the entire backup and get that all backed up. There are many examples here, and if you want more details, we definitely have references and client information we can talk to you about. Give us a call, shoot us an email. But we've seen performance gains of over 100-hour backups turned into a 4-hour backup because of multi-streaming capabilities or data parallel stream capabilities. So definitely give us a call and get more details if you're interested in that, but we have super performance. Bare metal. So there's folks out there with old servers sitting around just waiting to die. You got 7-year-old hardware. You're not even able to buy that hardware anymore. And you're wanting to make sure you get a backup of that. You can actually get a complete backup of that hardware from a bare metal backup. So it'll take the entire system with a complete snapshot of that. And then if that fails, you're not going to find that same hardware. So you want to go out, you buy a new server. When you do a restore, it'll actually modify your health, find your drivers, put the updated device drivers on the new hardware, and have your server up and running without you doing a huge amount of work trying to rebuild it and get things going. So it's a way to migrate to newer hardware or just make sure that your stuff is backed up and available and not worry about what you're going to have to put it on when you go and have to do a restore. On the console side, we can manage everything, as we mentioned earlier, from a single GUI. So in this instance, we actually have a SESM server. That SESM server is managing clients on the local network. We have a remote device server. That remote device server actually reports to our master server. So from that master server, this remote device server actually looks like storage that it can use. So you're not having to use a different console or go attach to a different server to be able to talk to that and identify where your backup's going to run to and make sure that your backup's running smooth. You get all your login and all your information off that master server. So manage all your sites, the entire environment, and your remote servers and all your storage off of one console. That console itself is a Java console. So that console will run on Linux or Windows, and it looks the same. So you don't have to worry about how it's going to look or moving between operating systems and having somebody learn something new between the two. So it makes it very simple. On the network itself, we are able to talk to SAN, as we talked about earlier, and you can talk to local storage in a SAN environment that allows you to do LAN-free backups. So you don't even have to have a huge performance hit on your network itself, especially if you have a 24-hour system, you have users using it all the time, you don't really have that window to have network bandwidth usage. So you can actually design the entire backup to put this on a SAN and get optimal performance from it. In a virtual environment, we have support on all the major hypervisors. On Zen Server, we can do hot and warm modules using the API. There is no agents you have to install on that. It'll actually talk to it with the API. We are also unique on Zen Server in the fact that we are able to grab memory state and system state of that device when we do the backup. Grabbing that memory state allows us to take a backup of a Windows server, we'll restore it onto another server, and when we do the restore, it maintains your activation information. So you don't have to reactivate or use additional licenses when you do your restore. If you just make a regular backup, script it, or copy that across right now, I think if anybody's had a chance to test that, you have to reactivate your license, which can be a pain. So that activation loss issue can be resolved just by using SEP backup to do your backup and do your restore. On the VMware side, multiple options. We have an agent you can put on the ESX host. We can use VCB and talk with VCB to do the backup. we also can use the ADP and talk to it agentless again to get your virtual servers on Hyper-V. And this is the case on Zen Server and for VMware. We will use VSS for file consistency. As long as you have the tools, Zen tools, VM tools, on your server, it will has a VSS part that will talk to the operating system and will get a file consistent backup for your OS. So we use VSS with Hyper-V also. And then open source, we can use LVM snapshots, grab the entire thing. Of course, doing snapshotting on all of these allows you to do live backups without users realizing that a backup's taking place. Just as a guideline on how a virtual guest backup takes place, we create a snapshot, mount that snapshot for backup, and then grab that system for the backup. So the whole backup is going to run. As soon as it's done, it'll unmount the snapshot and then delete it so that it's been recommitted back to the original base image, and it deletes it so you don't have to worry about this growing or causing problems in the environment. Even if the backup fails in the process, it will know that that snapshot was there. It will go back, clean that up so that you don't have to worry about those things getting left out there. Let's just look at some options and how the backup's going to look on a virtual environment. This is specifically a Zen server example, but it definitely works with VMware or anything where you have a master server or vCenter server that can look at your environment. So in Zen server, you have a master server. So we just have to point to the master server. When we point to the master server, it looks at all of the VM hosts, and it will find the guest that it needs to back up. So it'll go out, make a request, find the host that it needs to back up, and start that backup. It'll grab that server, back it up, and isolate the communication stream to the backup server. So you don't have a huge amount of communication going on with all the servers at that point. Now isolated, getting the backup of that server. That server fails, fine, we turn around, we can do a restore. That restore will put it on the same box, or in this case, we can put it on a different virtual host. So we now have a second copy of that server. This can be a DR site. So if this is a remote site, you now have a second copy. We can restore it, and during the restore, you have an option of either leaving powered off, or you can have it powered on as soon as it finishes the restore. So we'll leave this powered off. It'll be available as a cold standby in case something happens. That's great. We have one backup of this. We can actually modify this, though, so we can do a schedule that do a backup of that host, do a restore to another host, and we can guest sync between both sites, managing this backup all through the central console on the same schedule that you do your other backups. And you can get your same notifications on any failures or issues that are going on. Oracle, we back up the database, table space, and a data file level backup. We can definitely do restores with that. It uses RMAN to do the backups, do the restores. So you're using the native tool that Oracle maintains, keeps up to date, and obviously is compatible with every version of Oracle that they're running. So we're talking directly to RMAN. We install an agent that actually works directly with RMAN and uses RMAN to talk to those. We can do XML archiving, and it's a complete wizard-based configuration to try to simplify how you configure those backups and what happens. So you can definitely see how the remote script does a call to RMAN, and RMAN references the task on your subsystem master server and pushes that data back over to your backup media, or in a restore case, it would obviously pull it from your backup media. In an Exchange environment, we work with all versions of Exchange from 2003 up. The 2007 environment and 2010 environment obviously have some unique capabilities with other clustering options. We understand those, we talk to those, we back up passive nodes, so you're not putting a lot of traffic on your active nodes. We can back up all the roles, edge transport, hub transport, client access, mailbox server, uses VSS to quiesce your file systems, get those backups, make those take place. And it looks at the database and into your database. You can actually grab a single mailbox, the complete database, a single mailbox, or a single message if you need to do a restore. And you can see those in your console when you're doing the restore, so you can select the message that you're wanting to do a restore from. In SQL, it uses the standard Windows agent. You don't have to add a SQL agent also to put that on. You can do a full copy differential incrementals from that. It is VSS aware. Again, we'll take a complete of that file system, get that backup. You can do point-in-time restores, cross restores to databases in the same instance or another instance, and it'll do log backups with or without truncate options. So you can manage your logs all from your backup and how you want that handled. We are a very close partner with SAP. Been with SAP for over 15 years. Highest level of certification of any third-party vendor. If you guys are using SAP in your environment, you probably definitely want to know what SAP can do for you. I would definitely recommend looking at a demo or giving us a call. We can talk to you about some of that. We support all the SAP R3 applications. You can see the listing there, and it will do an off-host backup. So give us a call. We can get you more details on the SAP piece. And let's go into Novell. And obviously, this is the best of Novell. We want to know what it is. SAP is completely up-to-date, manages in the current version all of the backup and capabilities for your Novell environment. We use the TSAs for doing backups. We talk to the Novell server, the OES Linux box, any box you have talking to the TSAs. So as long as you have the TSAs configured correctly, you're going to get a backup, a good backup, from a current version of software. Not going to find that just anywhere. There is no system client needed since we're talking directly to the TSAs. And the only thing is you have to have an OES Linux box in your environment to do the backup. We use what's called a data mover, and we'll get into details on that. And that data mover talks to the TSAs. So right here is the example. Our backup server itself is OES2 Linux. We have the Novell system client installed on here. That system client is using Submitter on all of your Novell servers, whether it's OES Network or OES Linux, to talk to the TSAs, TSA-FS, TSA-FSGW, TSA-IF, TSA-NDS, and you can get those backed up, pull that information back across to your main server, and get a consistent backup of your environment. If you have a cluster that you're wanting to back up, the subsystem system works very well with clusters, and this cluster design works well with any environment, not just necessarily Novell. We will definitely go through some examples on Novell because the design can be set up differently depending on what you have for your environment, and we can show you how. We'll go through a design here on backing it up with a single server, or with a couple servers, even with a Windows server, and the requirements you have to have. The concept here and what we're trying to show you is just simply that the capabilities of the software is going to be as good or better than anything else you're seeing on any of the other backup software. And features that are there, you're going to have those same features and you're going to have more features. So let's show you some of the capabilities. We're going to take a basic cluster environment. In this cluster environment, we're going to have 3 nodes. Those nodes are going to be running different resources that we're going to be backing up. The GUI itself, when you go to do the backup, you'll see those resources available as an option under your cluster object. So you'll see your cluster, you'll see those nodes, and you'll see which ones you want to back up. If you have a single server, you can have this single server be an OES Linux box. The OES Linux box you can run your backup software on and your Novell client, which is your data mover. In our example we're going to do, our live demo, we will actually have an OES2 Linux box running, and we'll install the software, and we will go ahead and do a backup of a NetWare server. So right here we have all of our objects. You can see that the metadata, backup data, all of that's going across the LAN. So we're grabbing that all, putting it onto a backup that's locally attached to the server. So we can have any type of storage backed up sitting over there waiting for that to happen. If we move to a Windows server as our master backup server, so our system server can be a Windows server, the Novell services aren't going to be running on there. We will actually have a separate OES Linux box that's just running the Novell SMS pieces and the Step System Novell client. So that client is going to be running here, and that will be our data mover. So all the backup traffic is actually going to be running to the data mover, and then the data mover is going to send that information over to the Windows box, which will then be putting it into the backup storage. We can also do LAN-free backup. So we were talking about that before. In this case, we're going to actually take the traffic, move it to network storage that we have attached on the SAN. The difference here is we still have our Windows or Linux server sitting up here. All of our backup data is now going to be going to a separate disk on our SAN. This here is all accomplished because we're moving our data movers directly onto the nodes for the cluster. So the data mover itself can show up, and we can add a remote device server, so this actually looks like storage to the subsystem server, and the subsystem server can see that storage. We can configure the backup and have the backup run directly over to that. So we can go ahead and start our live demo. I want to give everybody a chance to at least write down the phone number and email in case you have any questions. So we'll do just a couple seconds here and then start a live demo. So in our demo environment, we have a network server and an OES Linux box. Our OES Linux box is running the Novell services already, and I have very minimal pieces installed. These are set up as just a basic plain install. So there's not anything on here except for on the OES Linux box I have added Java. So Java is already installed on this, Java 1.6. So that's the one step that I have jumped ahead here just to optimize and speed up the backup here. On the network box, it's just a plain install. So we have a one volume available. We're going to go ahead and back up that one volume. We will not be doing the restore just to save time and give you guys a chance to ask questions. If you do want to see the restore, we can definitely provide a demo or a follow-up, and we'll be providing additional webinars so you can get that information. Definitely log in or check out the SAP USA website to find out when those are happening, and we can get you that, and you can see how that piece takes place. So that's have this installed for the download, and I'm not going to download it. I have it downloaded, but I will show you the website. And let's go to SAPUSA.com. And at SAP USA, you can just go down. Anybody can do this. Click on the download site, and you can create a login for the SAP USA website. When you create a login, just going to take your email address and then allow you to download any of this software. So I can go ahead and click on Novell SUSE, 32-bit. I can log in with my login account, and you can see it has it available for all of the versions of software you're going to need on that. So if we do float set, you can also see that the actual backup software, here is a server. The server itself is 46 meg, obviously very compact, small download, not going to take you long at all. The GUI, 35 meg. You can run this GUI on Windows, and this specific one obviously is a Linux download, but that same GUI is 35 meg on the Windows side, and then just the client itself is 11 meg. The server gives you the client, GUI, and the server. And RTS is your remote device server. So that allows you to actually install and set up storage on remote servers that you can actually configure and have available from your master server. So let's go ahead and start a download. So in here, let's go to the downloads directory where I have these downloaded, and we have the Sesame server and a Novell client. So I'm going to install the Sesame server itself first. And Novell client, Sesame server. And let me put a minus in there instead of an underscore. So this is currently taking the Sesame download, all 56 megabits, and it's extracting it. It's going to then install the client and the GUI and the server. So the server is installed, it will go ahead and create a database for the system to go ahead and track all the clients and schedule information. After the database is set up, it'll also create a couple schedules so it can start by backing itself up. It will back itself up first to make sure that it is working, and it will run a test backup. So we'll see a couple backups take place. So as soon as we get this started, we can look and see what our schedule looks like, and it will go ahead and launch the GUI. So it's going to find Java and start the GUI and have that running for us when it's done. In the GUI, we will actually be able to see what happened during the backup, and that those backups were successful and that everything on the install was successful. So it'll actually show us that immediately when it launches. So it's finished with the install, should be launching the GUI. Okay, right down here at the bottom, we can see that it did a backup, did a restore, restore completed, and the backup completed successfully. So successful, everything ran fine according to what it's showing. Let's go ahead and go to the backups. We can see, yes, everything is green. If we had a failure, it would show that in red. So we can quickly identify what's been running, what runs successfully, or what's had problems. So green is successful, red is a failure. And we can go over here to tasks, and let's add a client. Now, the client we're going to want to add is our network server. So we have a network 658 server. The second piece we need to install to make this work is going to be our Novell client. So let's do the same install for the Novell client. Novell client's much smaller, as you can see. It quickly installed, and it is done. Let's create a new client. The client is network 658, and network 658 is a netware box. The operating system is netware, and we'll have to configure access. There is no agent that we install on the network server. As we had discussed, it talks to the TSA. So all we have to do is put in the login credentials, and Submitter and the TSA will do the rest. We will have to identify the data mover. The data mover is where we installed the Novell client. So we just installed the Novell client on this server itself. So we will say OK, and it should be talking to this server to get the data mover. As soon as it creates this client, the first thing it's going to ask us is if we want to create a backup job for it. So we will go ahead and create a backup job of the main volume, vol 1, and that main volume does have some data on it. It's not a whole lot of data, so the backup itself will run pretty fast as soon as we get the backup going. And we're probably not going to get to see a lot with what's going on the backup. When you have larger backups going on, we can actually watch the backup performance down here at the bottom. You can tell when the server first started, and I'll go through these windows and what's happening in these windows, and let's see if we can see something happen during our backup. So let's create a new backup. On the backup, let's go ahead and just tell it we want to grab the server, and we're going to grab the main volume. Now, first thing we're going to do is going to enumerate Novell services if it has login information. And I must type the login information wrong. Go back. It's complete with errors. There's no access, so I have to go ahead. So I put the backup wrong. Let's delete that. New client, netware 658-SEP.EP. For some reason, it doesn't automatically fix my typos. Okay. And we will go ahead and put in the password. Obviously, the data mover hasn't changed. So the data mover itself is still here. Data mover obviously does not have to be this server, but this is where we installed the client at. And let's go ahead and create a new backup. Hit the down arrow, and now we can enumerate the volumes. So now we can see, oh, we've got Novell file system. One thing we're missing here is eDirectory. So let's go ahead and set up a backup for this right now. Vol1, that's where all the data is. We're going to say OK. And just as an example of how this works, so we have this task created. We can look at it. Let's go back to our Novell server and Novell netware. To back up eDirectory, we also have to load TSA NDS. TSA NDS doesn't load by default on a default install. So TSA FS does. So if we load TSA NDS, we should be able to do a new backup. And let's go ahead and just select it again. When we hit the down arrow on the Novell services, we now see Novell eDirectory also. So just by loading the TSA, we now have that available. We can do schema, tree, or everything. So let's just pick everything and say OK. Go back to the performance window and see if we're going to be able to see this, and we're going to back up the volume. So immediate start. We're going to change our media pool. It created two media pools. The first media pool is for tape drives. The second media pool is a disk pool that it creates. So that disk pool is what we're going to back up on right now. This is a virtual lab. We don't actually have a tape drive hooked up to it, so that would not do us a lot of good. Go back. We can see that our backup is active. There is a refresh button here. We're going to go ahead and click refresh. It'll refresh every 5 seconds by default. We actually are seeing performance metrics right there. And it jumped, got about 40 gig, and finished. So our total data size, pretty small, 24 meg. Obviously got a successful backup. Let's just look at how that data looks on that backup. And then we will go ahead and open up things for questions. So we're going to just right click and choose a new restore tab. So if we were doing a restore, we can go ahead and identify the tasks that we backed up. So if we go back, we'll be able to see our tasks. We have a test backup and obviously the backup we just ran. So we want to choose the backup we ran. And then if we had multiples of this running, so this has been running every night, we are keeping 2 weeks of it, we would see all of those listed. You just select which version you want to run. Say next. And then we can go through here and actually pick an individual file or pick the whole directory. So as you can see, the whole thing is listed, and you can break those out. And you can go back in target node. We can back it up to the same server, or we can pick a new server. So GUI's pretty nice. Definitely simplifies some things. Makes it easy for you to set where that's at. You can do it with overriding or without overriding or create a new version. And makes it quick and easy to get that on the same server without worrying about causing any problems with your current data, or put this on a new server. So we're up running all in a matter of less than 10 minutes. But let's open this up for questions and see what people have. Now, Q, can I see the questions here?
Yeah, they should be on the, let me see if any came through to both of us. Yeah, there should be one over there on the Q&A, if you click on that tab there.
Q&A. Nope.
If you don't see them, I can just let you know there's just the one question in there.
That's not fun. Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Randall asked a question. Good. Can you restore files to a different OS? than the one from which they originated, i.e. backed up from NTFS but restore to EXT. And you will not be able to restore permissions. Obviously, permissions are not compatible between the two, but you can restore a file between the two.
Okay, cool. Looks like there's another question in there as well.
Yeah, a couple more coming up here. So,
cool.
If you want to restore a file from a week ago, how do you do that? So and I'm assuming everybody can still see my screen. So let's do another backup. And these backups are really fast. So immediate start, we'll send this to the test pool, say okay. So when you do the backups, they will all showing up as tasks that you do backups for. So we'll just go make sure our backup runs. We have refresh still running, and it's successful. We do a restore again. Now, obviously, I'm going to pretend that this happened in the past couple of days. When we do a new restore task, we select the task. This is still the same task. It's the job that we're backing up. But you can see we now have two versions. We have the one that we ran earlier and the one we just ran. If you had it from a week ago, you would actually just be able to select right here in your selection tab which one you wanted to do a restore from. So we will jump to the next question. How are the tape libraries taken care of, on-site or off-site? So what you will set up on the component side, topology, you can create multiple locations. So local, in this case, is on-site. We can create a new location. Our new location can be Denver. So we'll create a new site called Denver. You'll now see Denver show up here. And so actually I put Denver in local. Let's go into the site. Here we go. Delete that. Let me select topology, new location, Denver. So you'll have a site here. Now you can actually add your remote device server to this other site, and so you can manage it from the other site and manage all your jobs. You can also do groupings by group and group all of your jobs and servers into that group so you can actually back up to the additional site. Hope that explains it, but that's how we break that out pretty easily. Does SAP do a file level or image level of VMs? So we can grab either one. And so like on VMware, if the agent's installed, you can actually see the VMDKs. You can back those up directly. We obviously typically most folks do a image level of the backup itself. So you'll see an image, and it can grab that entire system, make it so you can do a restore as an image, but you can grab either one. Just to be sure, NSS volumes are supported on OES 2. Yep, and I actually have an NSS volume installed on our current OES box. So if I go back to Client and say New Backup Task, I just have to make sure that I have our credentials installed. Let me just say New Backup Task, and we should be able to see the breakout. Now, obviously on OES, you're going to see your Linux file system, and you'll see a Novell file system. Again, I don't have my credentials on the server. I'll just do it on the server itself. New properties of the server, Novell SMS, and the only reason I wanted to show this to you is, and you probably know that doing a selection of your file system, you're going to actually have to drill down past the Linux file system to grab the NSS file system. So New Backup Task, we will go ahead and grab the Novell services, and it'll see the Linux file system yet again mounted here, and then you have to select your NSS file system, and you'll see the volume. So you can tell how the Novell volume looks separate from the rest of your other folders. So it'll definitely grab your NSS file system on OES. What would you say are the major differences between your product and FalconStor? Did I lose that? And FalconStor. Both seem very similar. So FalconStor itself is actually based on agents that you put on systems for how things replicate to a disk. We aren't specifically trying to replicate to a disk. We're trying to do a backup and doing backups back over to tape. And I know that's one of the things that FalconStor has some agents for, but they're not as robust on how you can put those things on tape. And Lanai actually has some additional input he can do with that. And we work with FalconStor, so we're not really competitive, but here's Lanai.
Yeah, we actually have a partnership with FalconStor, and we have a joint appliance together that kind of combines both the best of both of our products and offers that so that you can have a backup, and then you can use FalconStor to really handle the deduplication side of things, and so you can replicate that from one hardware to another. So if you have any questions on that, again, you can contact us, and I can give you some more specifics. But we do have a close relationship with FalconStor, and we have some joint products together.
Does each snapshot take the entire data or just the change data? So currently, the snapshots themselves grab the entire server. And currently we have I think the release is actually going to be this week, where you're going to actually be able to grab snapshots and just backup snapshots. So you have just the change data based on CBT. So it will do change-based tracking on your virtuals and grab just that information so you can put just the bits back over there. So that will be available by the end of the week, and if you're looking to do that, we can get you a demo of that. And do we have any other questions? So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and open up. Oh, wait a second. I think I see something in the chat down here. Can the subsystem server be located at the remote site using a VPN tunnel for connection? Yes. And in fact, the subsystem server, you only need 2 ports to be able to talk to your backup. So the backup itself will only use 2 ports. So it's very easy to open, very easy to run through a firewall. And I may have missed that on the slide. Normally I talk about that. So it will obviously work through a VPN tunnel. So that's not an issue at all. And what version of Windows is needed? Windows 2003 and up. So it doesn't matter which version of Windows you have, but it's completely supported on 2003, 2008, 2008 R2. Does it have to be a server-based OS, or will Windows 7 work? I have not installed it on a Windows 7 workstation, but I know you can back up Windows 7 workstations. Okay, yep, we have installed it on Windows 7 workstation, so not a problem. You can actually install your master server on a Windows 7 workstation. So, obviously, you want to be concerned about performance and any other issues you have with running stuff from a workstation-based system, but we can talk about details and get you more information if you are interested. So hopefully I grabbed everything here. Yep. Let me go ahead, just put this back so you can grab any additional info on this. And this will stay open so you guys can grab the emails. And if you have any additional questions, go ahead and open them up. Otherwise,